Ibogaine is really the one, other than, kind of we got Western medicine, ketamine. Ibogaine's the most important psychedelic right now because it's the one it's an African root that's been used for tens of thousands of years, and it has been shown to be effective in breaking an addiction in one 12-hour session. And I'm talking about heroin, opiates, alcohol, gambling, meth, crack. It'll break that addiction in 12 hours because this plant is actually used by a tribe in Africa called the Bwiti. They use it as an ancestor-based religion where they use it to get in touch with their ancestors. And what happens when you take Ibogaine is you really do have this journey inside into your lineage, into your DNA. It's a real ghost of Christmas past where you're looking at your actions and your relationships and these traumas that happen, and you're really getting clean and clear with them. And the Ibogaine is so effective that, as I said, it is, capable of breaking addiction like that. But they're also saying that the physical benefits of Ibogaine are equally as powerful. People are using it for, all kinds of things, ailments, diseases. There was a recent study out that proved that when you take Ibogaine in a medical setting, you are physiologically 1.3 years younger after you have the Ibogaine.
Get out. That's crazy. Wow.
Incredible.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and I am excited and delighted to be joined by the one and only Zappy. You will know him as Zappy Zapolin. He's the psychedelic concierge to the stars. So let me tell you about this incredible guy, what he's been doing. He's a well-known futurist. He's an award-winning filmmaker. And he's also, as I mentioned, a psychedelic concierge to the stars. He has dedicated his life to the expansion of human consciousness. Playboy magazine labeled him the man who wants to change the world with psychedelics. You can see why our conversation has been a long time coming between us. As the director behind the acclaimed documentary, The Reality of Truth, Zappy won at the prestigious Amsterdam Film Festival's Van Gogh Award for documentary directing. That's a great film festival. I know all about it. The film features Michelle Rodriguez, Deepak Chopra, Ram Dass, Marianne Williamson, among other thought leaders, and continues to inspire millions of people. Zappy's latest film, Lamar Odom, Reborn, follows the psychedelic intervention he facilitated for the basketball superstar, that's where you've heard that name, using breakthrough treatments of ketamine and Ibogaine. Zappy believes it's his life mission to right the wrong of psychedelic prohibition. He founded the Mind Army social movement, which is fighting for the legalization of psychedelics. And the Mind Army believes it's every human's inalienable right to use these highly effective medicines to treat the burgeoning SAD epidemics, suicide, addiction, and depression. Zappy also co-founded the Ketamine Fund, which has already provided more than 500 free ketamine treatments to veterans suffering from PTSD or having suicidal ideations. The mission is to dramatically lower suicide rates. Most recently, Zappy co-founded Ketamine MD, and that's a telemedicine platform that provides affordable and life-changing at-home medical ketamine treatments. He's also the chief visionary officer at Psycheceutical. It's a biotech company that is revolutionizing psychedelic medicine delivery with patented technology, and it eliminates toxicity and side effects. That's the goal. Sorry for the long-winded introduction.
No,
my friend. The credentials are huge. Thank you for being in.
I can't wait to hear this guy talk. This is an incredible build-up.
The feeling is mutual, my friend. Thank you for beaming in. Welcome to the show, and let's get into it, man. But listen, before we do, let me tell everyone who's listening on iTunes and Spotify, if you remember, please take a moment and drop us 5 stars, maybe even a word of a review, whatever you feel. And if you enjoy listening to this podcast, we thrive on your reviews. We cover very controversial content and subjects. sometimes with ongoing conflicts. And so we tend to polarize our audiences, but we're asking our loyal family and followers to reach out and give us a review, like us, make sure you're subscribed across all platforms. Thank you. So without further ado, my friend, thank you for your patience.
Yes. Excited to be here. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Excited to have you, man. So tell me, did you have like I know I experimented with psychedelics in high school. Probably I was probably 15 years old when I first started, when I took my first hit of acid. And it was amazing. It was amazing. I'm wondering, how were you introduced into the psychedelic space? Did you have a juvenile youth like myself?
Yeah, I like you as a teenager, I experimented with all kinds of different things. And, I was lucky because I had this one psychedelic experience that was so profound that it's really informed my life ever since. And that experience was that I had taken psychedelics with a friend. And at one point when I was in the middle of it, I looked down at my hand and I could see that it was trillions of atoms and they were vibrating at this certain frequency. And then I looked over at my friend and I saw that he was the same atoms, but just a slightly different frequency. And the table, same atoms. I was like, oh my God, everything is frequency. And I must be using my five senses to kind of mute it down to something I can deal with. But there's so much more going on here. And so, great experience, but at the same time, I wasn't doing it, with any real intention or, anything like that. So years and years later, fast forward to 2010 or so, I say this in the Reality of Truth movie, but I kind of hit this moment where I had this spiritual midlife crisis where I was like, what? I just did everything that society told me to do to be fulfilled. Go to school, have a family, make money, be a philanthropist, you'll be totally fulfilled. And I did it. And I was like, not fulfilled, having some fun, but what am I even doing here? And I kind of remember back to that experience as a youth. And I thought, what if I was to try to go inside myself again, but with this time with a lot of intention, some guidance, because I felt too locked into the programming that was in my mind. And I thought, I got to break this. And I heard about people doing ayahuasca down in Peru and sitting with shamans. And I was like, I think I got to go sit with a shaman and really get to the bottom of this thing and figure out if it's even worth it living or running this whole game here. And luckily, having had a lot of production experience with filming and things like that, I was able to bring a film crew because I wanted to share what happened to me, figuring I could, help some other people. And on top of that, got really lucky because Michelle Rodriguez, the actress from Fast and Furious, she was interested in coming with me. She wanted to do ayahuasca at the time. She was a mutual friend of a friend, and she said, I'll come with you. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, it's on. I'm actually going to Peru to sit with a shaman, going to go into the rainforest and make this happen. So it was kind of an organic thing that happened, but I've always seen the benefits of going outside of my, just localized consciousness whenever that happens. And now I've realized that this is a real lifestyle that if I had been able to, or encouraged to microdose my whole life and have these macro experience once in a while, once a year when I needed it, I'd probably be living an even better life with less, ups and downs. So I'm recommending it now to everybody. I'm just saying it's time for us to, violate whatever law is in effect that says you shouldn't do it, because post-pandemic, I think everybody absolutely needs it. And these are, out of the ground. You believe in God. They're God-given. They're from nature. It's like, how are we humans so full of ourselves that we would think that something from nature, we could determine it as good or bad? I just think that's an old paradigm, and I'm happy to be sitting here in 2024 post-pandemic where people are starting to think, hey, you know what? I got to take my mental health seriously, and the things I was doing before weren't working. So what's new? What's cutting edge? And that is the description of psychedelics.
Yeah, what's available? What has nature provided, aka God, aka the universe, whatever you want to call the divine intelligence that has, birthed us and put us on this gorgeous planet. To imagine that this planet doesn't have all that we need, even in today's society and the way we've complicated our lives, that's a crazy thing to imagine. So
Yeah.
and we know the trappings of the pharmaceutical industry and the synthetic way to try to address some of the underlying conditions of living today, and that can be a dangerous road for some people, and some people are even using these kind of experiences and substances to get away from those synthetic pharmaceuticals. So there's a lot to unpack here, but I want to second what Zappy said. This is a great, when you do things with intention and you're using Mother Nature, it's almost always healing. It's there's, because you don't have the laundry list of side effects that you would get from taking a prescription, anti-psychotic or what do they call it with the other class? The ones you're not supposed to take when you do a plant ceremony.
SSRIs, antidepressants.
Exactly. Yeah, antidepressants.
It's a good point. I mean, I've during the interview process of these documentary films, I've gotten to interview some of the top religious thought leaders in the world, and I stump them every time now, because I say to them, okay, well, you believe in God, right? And they're like, yep. And I say, and you believe that God is all knowing, right? It knows everything. Like, yes. I say, okay, well, then God would have known we'd be coming out of a pandemic with a fentanyl crisis. And so wouldn't it just kind of make sense that God would have left some natural things here to help us tap into spirituality and break addiction? Like, if your God's not smart enough to do that, then I wouldn't even worship him. So, or he or her.
I'm with you 100%. I have a lot of questions that don't get many answers except answers that I'm like, yeah, that sounds like an answer right from you, and not a very, omnipotent answer. But, I have a tree out in front of my house, and it's when they were putting in my driveway, my house is new. I just moved in last year. They're putting in my driveway. I'm pretty sure they ran roughshod over the roots, and so because there's a beautiful twin, and I think it's a white oak that is flourishing, and then you can tell it's struggling, right? So I called a tree doctor this morning. He came out, and he looked, and he said we can save this tree, but what's really going to save this tree is fungus. He's like, once we'll get some nutrition to the roots, you're going to have to put a top layer of mulch. He said, and that's going to allow earthworms, and that's going to allow, I think he said mycelium, but he said that what's going to save this tree is once the fungus can, and I forgot the name he used for that fungus, can get to the roots, it's going to be able to connect the roots to the rest of the community around it and bring life back into that tree. He said that's our only shot at saving it. And I just thought that's what, in a lot of ways, psilocybin, especially when it's combined with other, mushrooms, that's the way it connects our brain. It connects our hemispheres. It allows for more interconnectivity, neuroplasticity, and you see that reflected in nature. And this guy's telling me how. And I know this, nature needs fungus. It's part of nature, and we're part of nature, And I just think that people underestimate how much we can learn simply by looking out at the way the world lives and thrives,
Absolutely. Yeah. I love all psychedelics. I think they each have their own purpose, and the job of a psychedelic concierge like myself is to figure out what it is that people need. And I do that in a process that's basically talking to them about what their intention is and what their traumas are that they're trying to overcome. And based on that, I'm going to make some recommendation that could be a series of things, kind of like a formula. But to that point, the psilocybin mushrooms, those are no doubt the ones that are going to save this society, because they are that effective, they are that safe, they are that cheap, and they can be grown, in a little tiny space. So, this is the one that saves society, Western society. And what's exciting to me is that these housewives in the Midwest are starting to microdose, and then they're turning on their neighbors and the PTA members. And then, as we know, the women in the family make most of the medical decisions for the whole family, the kids, the husband. So just by penetrating that Midwest group of moms, you're really going to get this penetration that's going to happen across the country, and it's unstoppable because people, just like with cannabis, people started eating gummies, right, and taking them in tinctures more in a medicinal fashion, and realized, wow, there's so much good healing in here, that when they get the mushrooms and all of a sudden they're dropping their antidepressants, they're getting off alcohol, they're not having to shop in order to get dopamine or whatever it is. Right. The word of mouth that happens from that experience is stronger than any movement to stop this from happening. It just can't be stopped. It's kind of like I'm saying, the cat's out of the bag, and it's just ripping through that Midwest, and that really feels good, because as we on the two coasts, we're battling it out for we're going to save the world and we're going to get this legal. Doesn't even matter. It's just ripping through the real America, in the heartland, where people, need proof, and they're getting it. And that is just so comforting that, it's happening without us, trying or winning or anything like that.
Yes. I have a few friends who have embarked on a ketamine therapy treatment protocol and sessions and all that, and so I grew up, I went to college. That's when I first was introduced to ketamine, and I had a brief, very small select experiences with it, but it was known as basically a tranquilizer almost, but it's much more than that, and the way it's been refined over the years is pretty incredible. So a lot of people hear about ketamine treatments. There's a lot of people who have used ketamine therapy to deal with depression, also underlying health issues, PTSD, and I'm still, because I have an old idea of what ketamine was, at least when it was totally recreational and illegal and not even being considered in this light. I'm wondering if you could talk to me a little bit about and educate me a little bit about, how is it used these days? And I know it's effective because I see the difference in some of my friends who have done this, and I see the difference in their attitude, their perception, and I'm pretty surprised by it. I'm wondering if you could educate me a little bit about how it's changed and how it's used to help people.
Sure. Yeah. No, I absolutely love ketamine. I fell in love with it as a tool after I came back from Peru and my experience with plant medicine. I was telling everybody, oh my God, you got to do plant medicine and sit with a shaman. And in reality, my friends who needed it the most were like, Zappy, I can't do that. I can't tell my family I'm going out in the jungle. They'll put me in a mental institution right now. And so when I saw ketamine, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is FDA approved. This is Western medicine accepted. Wow. I got to try this. Let me see what's here. And I convinced the doctor in 2015 to give me the treatment. And as soon as it hit me, I was like, this is going to change society. This is what people need. It's like the best of the ayahuasca experience in one tight little 45-minute experience without having to diet before and do all kinds of prep. And then, afterwards, all this integration, because it's just this very clean experience. And so the background, I think, is really interesting on ketamine. The way they found out it worked for depression, anxiety, and everything is that they were using ketamine's an anesthetic. So it's used, number one anesthetic used by oral surgeons on children still. They use in ER every day. Somebody comes in the emergency room if they're freaking out or they need stitches in their mouth or something, they'll give them ketamine because it's very fast acting, but it doesn't affect your breathing, so you don't need an anesthesiologist there. So in Vietnam, they were doing amputations out in the battlefield using multiple anesthetics, including ketamine. And they went and looked back after Vietnam, and they realized that all the people that had the ketamine anesthetic had not committed suicide at the same rate as the other people who had other anesthetics. They were like, wow, something's going on here. They brought it to Yale University. They did a multi-thousand person study, and they came up with a low dose of ketamine is 70% effective against even treatment-resistant depression that nothing else works for. So you're like, wow, that's incredible. What's going on here? Well, it turns out that the exciting part about ketamine is it's not a plant. So you don't have all these unknown variables that you have with plants, because as much as I love mushrooms, you can have two mushrooms growing together in the same tray and they have totally different strengths, different effect. And it's very hard to figure out, what that, how long it's going to last, how strong. With ketamine, a lot of people think it's synthetic or it's some kind of chemical. It's not. They actually take some salts, some minerals, and they process it, and this new ketamine crystal occurs. So that crystal is the same, this microcrystal is the same across billions of molecules, and the beauty of that is that makes it very dependable. You know how long it's going to last, you know what the effect's going to be during the sequence, everything is just kind of uniform. And that's what we need here as a society here in the United States, and for the medical establishment to embrace it fully. And so really, and people say, well, you're processing it. And I say, yeah, but you have to process ayahuasca. You have to take the vine of one plant and the root of another and boil it and make a tea out of it. So yeah, there's human intervention, but this is a natural, organic occurring compound. And once they realize that, they're kind of like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And for me, ketamine is like a tuning crystal, where when you put that frequency vibration of ketamine, which, is a very high frequency vibration, into your frequency vibration, and you have to kind of synthesize that, it brings you to a very high frequency vibration. It kind of elevates you to a higher frequency. And so I think, this is a real game changer because it's so safe. They give it to babies, and it's so effective that, even if nothing else works, ketamine's going to be 70% effective for treatment-resistant depression. And so we've got this miraculous thing here, and what people need to understand is there's recreational ketamine and there's medical ketamine. And recreational ketamine is done by snorting it up your nose. So it's going into your nasal cavity, it's hitting your opiate receptors in your nasal cavity, which can trigger an addictive response. It's hitting your ocular nerves and all kinds of things that are not happening when you do medical ketamine. And medical ketamine is either done in an intramuscular shot, an IV, or a lozenge that melts in your mouth and goes through your mucosa. So when you hear, oh my God, people went in the K-hole, because they're snorting it and they're having to take a large amount to get the bioavailability, and they're hitting their opiate receptor. It's probably a terrible, it's a horrible delivery method. And so, but when you get medical ketamine, and I've had, Dr. Glenn Brooks from New York Ketamine, who's done, 60,000 infusions. He says no one that's ever come in for anxiety or depression has ever gotten addicted to ketamine. He said, yes, a drug addict who's abusing drugs, if I give him a bottle of ketamine, they're going to use it in one day. But, that's the distinction. It's very important to make, I think, because, this is a game changer. The number one side effect of medical ketamine is it breaks suicidal ideation immediately. And people are like, well, how can it do that? And I used to think, how could it do that? But what's happening is ketamine puts you into this present moment awareness space where all the chatter just kind of melts away and you're in this super peaceful, calm state. And when you're in that state of present moment awareness, somebody who's going to commit suicide, usually they just think they have two options. I keep doing what I'm doing or I kill myself. That's it. That or that. And they get into the ketamine experience, all the chatter goes away, and all these new option sets start to open up for them. And they say to themselves, oh, you know what? I kind of like that, which could maybe lead to that, which might even lead to that. And I kind of like that too. And they come out of it after 45 minutes. They're like, I'm not going to kill myself. Like, this is just so interesting. I'm good right now. And then the science on the ketamine is that when the ketamine metabolizes in your body, it actually grows new neural pathways in your brain. So you're growing actual new gray matter in your brain. And so the protocol for ketamine, usually if you have treatment-resistant depression, is to do 6 treatments over 2 weeks. So you kind of build up enough of that foundation to support, maybe you have 50 years of doing what you've been doing, and now you got to fix this foundation. So if you do 6 treatments of ketamine, you metabolize all that, you're going to have a strong foundation. And then the idea is that maybe once every quarter, you would do a booster one time and just kind of continue to solidify your strength. And, kind of like I said, you're in present moment awareness. So you're building new neural pathways that are about, I'm here in this present moment and I'm going into the future. A lot of the, negative memories and traumas and things, it's not that they didn't happen, but they just, after the ketamine, it seems like they don't have the same electrical charge on them. And so just so powerful, the fact that, and I'll add one more thing. Usually with plant medicine, it's kind of ambiguous what's happening. Like, why is this giant green version of my mother talking to me? Or, like, what the hell did that mean? But with the ketamine, it's like, when you're in present moment awareness, you're there. What happened. So when you come out of that 45 minutes later, you're not confused. You're just very clear. And I think, the idea is that you walk forward in those new neural pathways and you're able to, build new ones and work on making sure those are positive ones. But as long as you're doing that, this is kind of the medicine for everyone. This is the one I would say that probably all of us post-pandemic have some amount of PTSD that we're working on, and ketamine just seems to be, the closest thing to a panacea that we have.
Fascinating. That is so helpful and enlightening. I did not know most of that about. So thank you so much for that very thorough and introduction and basics. Now I have more questions. But so when you're working with, so my question is, I know you've heard of spiritual bypassing like when you're working with people who do have, and most people have some trauma, that whether they realize it or not, whether they're aware of it or not, it, is affecting them in their relationships today. Most of the time, the people who are most affected have the least idea of how traumatized they've been. That's my experience. I'm sure you've had similar experiences.
Well said, yeah.
Working with people. But so when you go into these sessions, is there any, like, obviously for someone who, with like a soldier coming back, there has to, when there's that major thing that happened. I mean, and then, also sometimes it is a childhood thing, but do you go back and do you work through that event? I've heard of people using these substances to take the charge off that event so that the mind is no longer kind of hiccuped by it and being screwed up by it. Is there work like that is also done, or is it just kind of like trying to get people present enough to move on and so that I guess there's a sense that is healed, and and no longer going to affect them or even plague them in a way that's not healthy.
Yeah, no, there really is, because there's two elements to that. Number one, in being in that experience yourself, you really become the healer. And secondly, I think the important part of that is that doing therapy or working on things after, while you've got these new neural pathways that are fresh, you're able to do a lot of work that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do, because it doesn't have the charge on it. And also, we have these hereditary patterns that we may have inherited from, our parents, our grandparents, and their trauma. They showed clinically that if they were doing an experiment with mice where they were showing them a purple light, and then they were shocking them, showing them a purple light, shocking them. And at a certain point, they'd turn the purple light on and they would just go into the shock reflex without even shocking them. And they looked at their children, and when they'd show them the purple light, they'd go into a, fetal position. And it went back 13 generations until that's cleared with the purple light. Yeah.
That is so fucking crazy.
Insane. And so you look at that and you're like, okay, so all my grandparents' trauma, the great-grandparents, you go back 10 generations in any family, there's some horrifying trauma that happens. So, how do you clear that? It's very difficult to clear it with talk therapy and logic and, trying to trick the brain with, chemicals and things like that. And, antidepressants, you're taking those every day. They're building up in your body and your brain, changing your brain chemistry. With the ketamine, it's out of your body. It metabolizes. It's out within hours. And so for me, it's like, this needs to be the first thing you do before you go potentially on some medication or take some path. And it's, to this point, it's really been the last resort. And I want to, come back to what you initially said about this prohibition. And, it turns out that a lot of the prohibition was coming from the alcohol companies, because the alcohol companies knew that when people got their hands on psilocybin mushrooms and marijuana, they were not going to be as interested in drinking, and it was going to be really bad for their business. So they started to propagandize, oh, you're going to jump out of a building, your brain's going to
gateway
melt.
Drug. No, alcohol is the fucking gateway drug. Let's be real.
Yeah, exactly. So they're really the guys behind this whole misinformation campaign. But there's some really good news that most people don't know. I've had some firsthand experience with this, where the pharmaceutical companies, as strong as they are and as powerful as they are, there's one group that's even more powerful, and that is the health insurance companies. These are like the United Healthcare, Kaiser. These guys are the guys that are buying the drugs from the pharmaceutical companies. And in the last few years, during the pandemic, they had a shift, and they said, we know that there's some value in these psychedelic compounds, ketamine, mushrooms. Pharmaceutical companies get to work on, commercializing these products, because we're not going to pay for expensive antipsychotics. We're not going to pay for people coming into the emergency room on a Saturday night having a panic attack, or talk therapy for 15 years. If these psychedelic compounds can be beneficial, we want them as soon as possible. And I even consulted with the top folks at United Healthcare about ketamine, and they're now doing side-by-side trials there with regular ketamine, which is very, cheap and inexpensive, versus Johnson & Johnson came out with an S-ketamine that's very expensive but covered by insurance. And United Healthcare is doing a side-by-side. And, of course, they're going to be able to prove that the cheaper ketamine, the normal one, is more effective or just as effective as the expensive one. That's going to go away. And they're working on psilocybin through their own channels in different countries and things, because they're like, if a microdose of psilocybin that costs, $1 could, save tens of thousands of dollars a month, we got to get there quick. And they are the bigger 800-pound gorilla that's putting the squeeze right now on the pharmaceutical companies. So we got a big powerful ally right now in this fight.
Nice. That's good. That's great news. I mean, that explains a lot of the movement we've been seeing on it. Um, my God, my mind keeps going to DMT and what your experience with that has been. But I don't want, people don't know about Ibogaine either, and I know you've had some experience with that. So maybe let's touch on Ibogaine, because that's another thing that people are like, I've heard of it, but I don't know what's Ibogaine, and
Yeah.
how is it different than what people understand to be DMT or the spirit molecule.
Yeah, Ibogaine is really the one, other than, kind of we got Western medicine, ketamine. Ibogaine's the most important psychedelic right now because it's the one it's an African root that's been used for tens of thousands of years, and it has been shown to be effective in breaking an addiction in one 12-hour session. And I'm talking about heroin, opiates, alcohol, gambling, meth,
Wow.
crack. It'll break that addiction in 12 hours because this plant is actually used by a tribe in Africa called the Bwiti. They use it as an ancestor-based religion where they use it to get in touch with their ancestors. And what happens when you take Ibogaine is you really do have this journey inside into your lineage, into your DNA. It's a real ghost of Christmas past where you're looking at your actions and your relationships and these traumas that happen, and you're really, getting clean and clear with them. And the Ibogaine is so effective that, as I said, it is, capable of breaking an addiction like that. But they're also saying that the physical benefits of Ibogaine are equally as powerful. People
Wow.
are using it for, all kinds of things, ailments, diseases. There was a recent study out that proved that when you take Ibogaine in a medical setting, you are physiologically 1.3 years younger after you have the Ibogaine.
Get out.
And
That's crazy. Wow.
incredible. And so, yeah, here's this root that's growing out of the ground. They basically just scrape the root. So you're taking, a pill that has scraped root bark. They're able to actually, that's called iboga. And then they're actually able to isolate just the alkaloids from the bark. So you don't have to take so many root bark pills, and just give you the alkaloids in one pill. You pop it in. It's usually about 1,000 milligrams, 1 gram for a, addiction related or, serious journey or treatment. And incredible. I wound up doing it in 2015. I didn't have an addiction, but I was just, as a psychonaut, I had tried all these other things, and I was like, how could it break a heroin addiction? That doesn't even make sense to me. I'm sure I could, get through 12 hours of a journey. Like, let me try it. And I did. Has to be done, supervised by a medical person, because it is that kind of a significant experience. And but it was, I understood after how it does it, and it really, does a full inventory on your entire database in your mind. And people say it feels like, when your computer gets slowed down because it's got all that, garbage information, then you clean it, you clean the cache out, you reboot that thing, it comes back online really clean. They're saying like all the garbage, all that social media, all that advertising and stuff that's coming at you, the Ibogaine kind of clears that out, and you're kind of fresh now with a fresh slate to go forward. And what I love about it is that, I noticed that in the days after, you are in a different state where you kind of understand what your frequency is, your base frequency, before they started putting all this societal stuff on top and everything. And so you have that resonance at your own frequency. So then when people come to you and say, hey, do you want to do some drugs? And you're like, doesn't really resonate with me. No thanks. As opposed to you just reacting or trying to use something to, get to regulate your nervous system to baseline, you're at baseline, and you start to make really easy decisions about what's good for you, what you like and don't like. And Ibogaine is said to give you like a window of maybe, 6 months to get your lifestyle changed and proper for you, to, live a different life. But the beautiful thing is that the the window that you have right there, it's said that the Ibogaine, part of what it does is it wipes your prefrontal cortex. So when you come out, you don't have any cravings for anything. You're literally, I could, put a bottle of heroin in front of you or whatnot, and you'd be like, doesn't resonate, because it's not in you. You have no craving. You have no association with it. And for a lot of people, they don't go through, they don't quit drugs because of the detox. They know that 6 weeks of absolute hell to get off of these, drugs or alcohol, it's just the worst thing ever, and they don't want to go through it. Well, with Ibogaine, you don't detox. 12 hours later, it detoxed you, wiped your prefrontal cortex, and you don't have to go through that hell. So I'm saying, why wouldn't anybody, choose 12 hours over, 6 weeks of white knuckling your way through? And I just want to make this point, Faust, is I've been to some of these, AA meetings or NA meetings with friends to support them. And I look around and these people are saying, yep, I'm totally clean. I'm sober. And then I watch them and they're drinking, 6 cups of coffee with 10 sugars.
5 Coca-Colas.
Yeah. They're vaping every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
They're on Xanax from the doctor.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
And they're on Xanax
just
from the
stepped
doctor.
out for a cigarette.
Yeah. And then on top of that, they're like, I got to go to a meeting in 2 hours so I don't use. And I'm like, that's not a life. That's horrible. No. Like, why would you want to do that? With Ibogaine, you detox, wipe the cortex, have your life in front of you to work on. It's like, I don't even understand why somebody would try to, be sober by, just abstinence. That's almost impossible, except for a few % of people who are capable of doing that. And, of course, we know that the, drug and alcohol rehab centers, they kind of count on people coming back once or twice or 3 times or 5 times. So it's part of their business model. And they're not that psyched about Ibogaine becoming legal here in the States and somebody getting better in 12 hours. It's just not good for business.
They make a lot of money. Some of those centers, especially probably out where you are, they make a lot of money. That's not people don't understand that how much that ticket costs. Yeah. It is not cheap. It is big business. And if it worked well, I would say probably worth it. But 3 to 5% is their AA, and those guys, what they say their success rates are for long-term quitting. With Ibogaine, it's just, it's very high. You're talking about a majority of people have a life-transforming thing. So we have to push really, a lot of what I've been doing is awareness for Ibogaine with media and celebrities and, just really trying to get it out there and say to people, because I don't think it's a conspiracy necessarily that this is being kept from people. I think it's just pure lack of knowledge. And I think we have to educate people. And I make this point, and a lot of doctors don't love it when I say this, but the reality is doctors don't really even know about nutrition, which could solve 80% of the things they're working on. So why would I think they know about psychedelics? They don't. So I'm not going to listen to them. They're wrong. But I will listen to Johns Hopkins, MAPS, University of California, San Francisco, major studies, incredible results. That's who you've got to listen to, and you got to migrate yourself away from the traditional, medical establishment that just, they don't have this education yet. They're completely ignorant on this subject. Totally. And many of them are well behind, as far as what's actually happening in this space and some of the incredible results people are getting, and that my biggest problem with the Alcoholics Anonymous and all the 12-step programs is, like you said, what do they got? They got about a 35% average, right? A
No,
success rate.
three to five.
Oh, is it 3 to 5? Is it that
5%.
low?
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
that
it was
low.
even higher than that. Wow.
No.
So obviously there's something enormously missing, from a lot of these programs, and I have a lot of theories about that. I think that they're a good idea. I think they were inspired, but they're very limited in their thinking and the way that they have people kind of affirm their addict or addiction. Is just, don't you want to affirm being well? You know what I mean?
Right,
Shouldn't your mantra be, I'm not I'm a new man. I'm a new person. I'm no longer recovering, but I'm free.
Yes.
I have no. So I'm just like, do you understand that even the mantra is dooming? You can't go around repeating I'm an alcoholic or I'm an addict, because then you're constantly self-affirming that old identity. And how can you create a new personality and personal reality when you're too busy fucking attending meetings confirming the old? I don't
Right.
Not to put people off, because sometimes it's a good first step for people to go there and realize that they do have a problem, that they are among other people who have the same tendencies.
Yeah.
That can be a wake-up call.
Yeah, and also, most addictions at the heart of it is some kind of a trauma that the person's trying to not deal with. I did this film with Lamar Odom, Reborn, where I gave him a psychedelic intervention, and I started with ketamine because he'd never gone inside his own mind. He'd always been told psychedelics are bad, and so I started with the Western medicine, go to the doctor's office, but the realization I had was, his addiction was stemming from his mother died when he was 12 years old of cancer in front of him. He had a 6-month-old son who died, and he just never processed that. He just would take something, alcohol, drugs, gambling, women, whatever, just to not think about it, not sit in his apartment or his house, focused on, the reality of death of people that, he loved. And so, whatever it was, his addiction was to just not thinking about it. I think that's a lot of people that are trying to suppress some kind of trauma. So if you don't get to the root of that trauma, you're just covering it up and pushing it down the road until, it comes out in some really negative way. And so, that is, I think, a really important thing to realize, that, when you go to AA and you're confirming, like you said, and you're talking to other people, that doesn't get to the root of why you're doing what you're doing. And the power of psychedelics is they're going to get to the root of that. And as scary as that could be for people, it's so freeing that I think if we could just, help people to understand how safe and effective these things are, and why, resolving those things is a lot better than covering them, I think we'd have a whole new treatment paradigm going.
We'd have a whole new world going, honestly, because I believe that this world is unbelievably unaware that they're acting from past trauma, and when you act from past trauma, you are a reaction, and you are one trigger after the next. Most people, who are coming from that, who are unhealed, are literally trigger happy, whether it's temper or gun, whatever it is, relationships, there tends to be a lot of conflict. And what do we look at when we look out into the world right now? Conflict, unresolved trauma. And you're not going to get anywhere doubling down on trauma, so people who just continue to anesthetize themselves and find ways to pretend like it's not there, or keep their head in the sand, it's not going to work.
No.
You got to get to the root and realize how deep that root is. A lot of times it's deeper than you think, and you got to work on it, because it's the only way to freedom. It's the only way we're going to find peace, not just in the world, first with ourselves,
Beautiful.
I believe that.
Yeah. I also, I think, like, right now, more than ever, people's brains aren't even able to handle the amount of information and technology coming at them on a constant basis. They're kind of in this frozen state where they don't even know what to do. Their brain can't operate fast enough. And I think we need some kind of a, a leap forward, in our consciousness, in our brains, and so I see psychedelics as doing that. The evidence is there, they do it, but it seems like right now we're having kind of what I call an empathy crisis, where people's empathy, they want to care, but all of a sudden they're so distracted with everything else that it's just forgotten about. And so how do you create more empathy quickly? There's only two ways I've ever seen. It's either have a near-death experience or have a major psychedelic breakthrough. And of course, we can't, depend on people having near-death experience. So if a psychedelic breakthrough can lead you to be able to actually put yourself in other people's shoes, which is kind of the definition of empathy, is to, not just, see it, but to really feel what somebody's going through. That I think if people have that more empathy, then we get a critical mass of people with a raised amount of empathy. We could solve any problem we have as a society easily. We would even be thinking forward. We'd be thinking, wait a minute, what about water in 50 years? Hold on a minute, And right now, people are just frozen without empathy. They have some amount of compassion, but that's not empathy. And so psychedelics give you that instantly more empathy, and that's powerful. And then the second theory that I kind of have of why these are so important and so critical right now is that I also think that people get kind of bored in life. You have your human filtering mechanism that's scanning for danger all the time. And then you start to filter out things like, I know an airplane's probably not going to crash into my car, so I'm not filtering for that. And you filter and filter out. And all of a sudden you kind of know what's going to happen. And before you reach out for your coffee, you're like, you knew you were going to pick it up before you reach. So people get stuck. So what do they do to get out of that? They'll go to a horror movie to try to get, one thing to happen that they don't know is going to happen. Or they go to a comedy club and the guy says something that's like, oh my God, it's so shocking. I wouldn't have known. And so psychedelics are the greatest way to accomplish that, because when you have a psychedelic experience, you need to go into that and say, I'm surrendering to whatever happens, and I know I'm going to come out of this. I know it's going to wear off, but I'm going to have some experience that I'm absolutely not going to know what happened. And when you come out of that, it's so freeing. You're just like, oh my God, like nothing's boring. There's so much more. And I think, people need that right now in our society. It's those are the two things that I think could really leap us forward as a society.
Absolutely.
It feels like psychedelics are coming in this 11th hour. As we're about to go over the cliff, they're going to take us to the right. And that's a beautiful thing to witness.
It is. And you're absolutely right. And the reason why people can't get up in the morning, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's like, it's the same. I said, well, I bet you if you and your husband had a trip to Cabo planned without the kids and you had to get up in the morning tomorrow to make the airport, you guys would have a spring in your step. She was like, absolutely, we would. I was like, so maybe it's not just, life, but maybe it's your routine, because the human mind, the brain we need novel experiences. What happens is we get in the habit of not getting any, and we get stuck in our routine, and then we don't know what's missing. We don't know why we're unhappy. Well, you haven't fucking done anything different in 4 years. You know what I mean? Right. Try do something. I mean, and there are people who know this who do everything like, they brush their teeth with their left hand. I started driving with my left foot. Probably not the greatest idea, but it keeps me very, very
keeps you in the game. Yeah,
keeps me in the game. Keeps me think. Makes me use my mind differently. So I mean, it's the little things sometimes, because if that's all you can do, but we need novelty, and so there's a lot of. I don't know where you would need to live to not be able to find a community, or find a program or a retreat that you can get involved with, to break up the routine, set an intention and go on that, even if it's a
Yeah.
weekend, even if it's a day. They have a lot of I saw, like, I'm seeing in New England, they have a lot of, you could come for the day and have an experience, and
Yeah.
then you leave that night. So why not check it out, as opposed to sitting around unhappy.
Yeah,
That's what I
no,
say.
it makes a ton of sense. I mean, people are always like, oh, Zappy, your answer to everything is psychedelics. These aren't a panacea. And I'm like, no, these are pretty much the closest thing we have to a panacea. And I really do believe that there is a proper dose and compound for every experience that people are going through. When I see the war break out in Ukraine or in Middle East or something, my mind doesn't go, we got to get everybody to the table and we got to fix this thing and stop the. No, I think, oh my God, we got to get 1 million doses of ketamine over to Poland, where these displaced people are, because like they didn't want to be in a war. Like they have PTSD.
My God.
Let's get them some ketamine, and then when the war's over and so forth, they're going to be in a position to handle it and go back into society in a positive way. So, right down the line, from addiction, depression, anxiety, I always think this is a first step, because you've got to break that pattern. You got to do a pattern interruption.
Yeah.
And for me, I just launched a new service with some incredible business partners, doctors, nurses, therapists, and we're calling it Keta VIP. And this is a VIP service where we come to your home. A trained expert comes to your home, guided medical professionals, to make sure, number one, you're safe and you're in the right set and setting, and that secondly, you get as much as you can from that experience, so that afterwards you're getting all the benefits. And so we're coming to your house, we're giving you our ketamine protocol, we're showing you, how to integrate, we're having you work with an assisted therapy over Zoom afterwards. And the beautiful thing about this is, it's kind of came in response to what happened with Matthew Perry, the actor, where he overdosed recently. And, as they always try to do, they try to paint it into some kind of a negative thing related to, what they don't understand. So they were saying, oh, he had an acute ketamine was the cause of death. I'm like, no, he drowned. He tried to be his own doctor. He gave himself ketamine and some other things. And then his muscles were so relaxed that he just drowned. Like, it's drowning. If he had drowned from a muscle relaxer, they wouldn't have said
or
acute
alcohol.
muscle relaxers.
No, they wouldn't. Of course not.
So
wow.
But my point is, the silver lining that came out of that tragic experience is that on every newscast they kept saying ketamine is incredibly effective for PTSD, anxiety, depression. However, it could be addictive and dangerous, and it has to be done in a proper setting. And they got that into people's head. And now I'm getting all these calls where people are saying, hey, I want to get the benefits of ketamine, but I know I can't play doctor with myself. What do I do? And the answer used to be go to a ketamine clinic, have a treatment, that kind of thing. But post-pandemic, people don't want to go to a clinic and sit around with, other people breathing their germs. They don't want to be with other people, who might be less stable than they are, whatever it is. So to be able now to come to your house with a medical professional, make sure you're safe and you're in the set and setting, give you the ketamine. We do an intramuscular shot. They give you like a equivalent of like a shot right here in the arm. And the beauty of that is that you get all that medicine at the same time. And the point of ketamine, and one thing I left out, is ketamine is different than all the other psychedelics, because the other psychedelics are what you would consider a hallucinogenic, where you're going to hallucinate. Ketamine is a dissociative. So it's basically separating your left and right brain and letting them just communicate any way they want without your ego getting involved in it. And so if you see a brain scan of ketamine, you can see it's 80% of your brain is active during the ketamine, where, like all these movies where they're like, oh, we can't wait to find the limitless drug where we can use most of our brain. Hello, we found it. It's called ketamine. we got to use it in a medical way, and we've got to, come up with all the right protocols for people. But my Ketamine VIP, starting in Los Angeles, coming to Las Vegas, Miami, New York, it's a premium service, no doubt. It's not for everybody. It really is, for people who have the means and want to be safe, and they want to have, an experience whereby, they get as much out of that experience as possible. And
Yeah.
so, very excited to bring this forward because, as they always talk about with psychedelics, the set and the setting are really important. And
Oh
by
yeah.
that, they mean your mindset and where that's at, and then the setting being where you are and who you're with.
Right.
If
Right.
you're in the right set and setting with the right people, I'm going to say almost every time you're going to have a good experience. It's when people take psychedelics the first time or sometime and they don't know what they're doing and they take too much and they go to a setting like a concert or a rap. And of course that's a meltdown.
Right.
But in the right set and setting, you're going to be fine. You're going to get a lot out of it. And I kind of equate it to like a driver's license. Like, when somebody's 16 years old, you don't just throw them the keys and go, good luck.
Right.
They're going to be, that car is powerful energy. Well, it's just like these psychedelics. You have to be guided. This is powerful energy. But as long as you're guided like that, just like handing somebody the keys after they've, done that training, it's
Yeah.
you can be responsible and get all the benefits of a car without being
Yeah.
afraid for them.
Very cool. So has that started? Have you begun that service yet?
Yeah, we have. We're doing
Nice.
it's
Awesome.
really fun because people like I said, they want to be in their own space, and
Yeah.
ketamine's one of those where if you know best case scenario, you're at your house and
Yeah.
afterwards you can just relax or go to sleep. You wake up the next morning and you feel like all the cobwebs have been shaken off.
Yeah.
You're not getting triggered, and you're just kind of like in a very fresh state to take on the world. And so you've probably seen Elon Musk has been saying that he's been using ketamine for a long time for depression. And I have no doubt, because it is incredible for depression. And, I'm sure his life,
Yeah.
is very frustrating with nobody else being as smart as you. And you have to explain everything 10 times to people. So, he was using it for depression, but you can tell that over time that ketamine is building these neural pathways, and he's at a whole nother level than other people because he started out as some kind of a savant, but now he's got ketamine, building that wiring and reinforcing it. And I think that's why he is who he is today,
Yeah.
because of that association with this incredible medicine that's actually good for your brain.
Yeah, that's amazing. What do you think about DMT, my friend? What do you think about the fact that, it's androgynous in the body, and yet we obviously have the ability to keep it contained and inhibited. It's only certain situations where we see it, increase to a degree that, it is now being, I guess, overloaded in a way into the brain and changing our perception. And then also obviously it's the active drug found in not drug but what do you call it, ingredient or I don't know what you call it.
Compound, yeah.
Compound, yeah, in ayahuasca, and then there's also 5-MeO, which comes from a toad. And I can't let you go without hearing your thoughts and your wisdom about DMT.
Yeah, so DMT is amazing. Like you said, it's in everything. It's already in ourselves. But what they realized was that you could take DMT from a plant, or in some cases other types of DMT from, an animal like a frog or a toad or something like that. But when you take DMT from a plant and you smoke that DMT, you are getting like basically a high dose of DMT that your body is able to process. And what I love about DMT is the experience is so short. You're talking 10 minutes, something like that. And, in our society where people, want everything quick, this is the quickest thing that you
Oh my
could
God,
possibly imagine to,
fucking
leave the
totally
physical.
rearrange your understanding of everything in 15 minutes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and then the cool thing is after it's over, it comes out of you so fast. It's like almost like a shiver where it's like, oh, and then
Yeah.
it's gone. I mean, it's just like you're back to totally normal. You're not, groggy. You're not, trying to process. You're just like, wow, wait. And like a dream, it is, it's hard to hold on to things that happen really fast
Yeah.
and like a dream. And so DMT for me, it's a great way to, pattern interrupt somebody, but at the same time, I understand why people do ayahuasca to get that DMT over a
Yeah.
longer period of time where they can really do work while they're in there and integrate things. The DMT, it's like a dream. It's like a very quick,
Yeah.
daydream and then you're back. But there's a lot to it. The 5-MeO DMT is actually, when they take that from the toad, that is actually a venom medicine. So I would categorize that as a venom. And to the point of like the near death experience, what's happening is you're smoking this venom, and all of a sudden your body goes into this death response where it's a death spiral. Your body's like, oh my God, we're dying. We got to save this thing. It's like cancer cells, get over here. Everybody, we got to fix this thing. And everything works to, be in harmony. And then you didn't take enough to kill you. So you start to come out. Well, now you come out and everything is back in harmony. And so it can be very powerful as an agent to, to disrupt even, adverse medical situations and things like that. But, they always say that, I think Bruce Lipton says that in order for the caterpillar to become the butterfly, it really needs to go into the death spiral where it starts to die. It can't just, be like, oh, I think I'll become a butterfly now. No, it actually has to start dying. These new imaginal cells come out and they start to, form you into a butterfly. So it's like the body, until that, 5-MeO DMT death spiral starts to happen, you're not going to get the cancer cells to, help out and reorganize and redo what they're doing. It has to be
Become
that.
different kind of cells almost. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are, I'm very hopeful that in the next few years, as psychedelics become legal, we're going to have a test, let's say for mushrooms, where we're going to test people, and like a peanut allergy, we're going to find out, hey, there's 2,500 people a year that should not be doing mushrooms, and they're allergic to these fungi. So once we clear that up, I don't even think there's going to be bad trips anymore. I think those are just people who have some type of an allergy or process it differently. So, we don't ban peanuts and just be like, nobody ever has a peanut again. No, we just isolate who should and shouldn't. And I think that's going to be the case with psychedelics. And these will be a regimen that you'll go to a trained professional and they will assess, what you need. And it could be a formula of things.
Zappy, right? I lost your sound. Can you hear me? I can't hear you anymore.
Rejoin, I guess.
Yeah, no problem. Because your sound went out, and I was like, oh, wait. I was like, did I pull my plug? And then I noticed that you were talking about I couldn't see your levels. But you were saying that once this industry is finally legalized and we start to look at and ascertain whether people are actually having a bad trip or simply have a reaction, almost like an allergic reaction to some of these psychedelics, we can really start it's going to change everything. That's what you were talking about before the mic went out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to mention one of the other cool things that I've been doing has been these group ketamine sessions. I've been holding them out at Camp Zappy out in Malibu Hills. I did one in Essex, Massachusetts for a group of Harvard Medical School doctors, Yale Medical School doctors. Did one in Soho for some Wall Street people. But we'll basically put 20 people in a room laying on their own mats. We'll have the doctor clear everybody, give them the ketamine injection, and listen to the same frequency-based music. We'll put a group intention on it. And the experiences that people have are completely life-changing. You know, these 20 doctors from Harvard and Yale, most of them had never even had a psychedelic experience. And so we have this 45-minute experience. We lay there for another 45 minutes in the best meditation of your life. And we came out, and when you hear the testimonials of these other people, you know, their lives were changed. And that was, you know, these people who, if they had known about this 30 years ago, their life would have been completely different. Even if they knew about it 2 years ago, their life might have been totally different. And so much healing, so much benefit happens so quickly. I don't think there's anything as reliable, safe, and effective as psychedelics are. And to that point, coming back to it, if we could test people for what's good for them and right for them, I think these are going to be, you know, move across society really quickly. And, you know, I'm not against pharmaceutical companies by any means. I really think we need them and their distribution to get the psilocybin mushroom microdoses out and the ketamine out and these things. So if we work together and we just accept, hey, we're coming out of a pandemic, the old thing isn't working, we're in a very dire situation, we can all just band together around these compounds, and life's going to be fantastic.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Zappy, tell everyone where to find you, where they can keep up with all this incredible work you're doing. I'm so glad we had this conversation, but I want to make sure everyone who listens knows where they can find you and keep up with all your work.
Sounds good. I'm at Zappy Zapolin, Zappy, Zapolin, Zapolin. Kind of like a violin, Zapolin. So I'm Zappy Zapolin on social media, zappyzapolin.com. You can check out ketamvip.com. And you can check out my new web series on YouTube where I've got a camera crew that's following me around. I'm going to my meetings and I'm going to psychedelic events and having my own psychedelic experience, just letting them film, and just hopefully that, will help people to have the confidence in their own life to, take that step when it's ready. Then they found the right compound, the right set and setting, that hopefully this can give them the confidence to, take that leap and change their whole life.
Far out, brother. We got to hang out. We might have to do a joint video together because this sounds fantastic. Everything.
Yeah, I'd love to come visit you at the web show for sure. And,
that'd be awesome.
And let's do a journey because, that's, I think people seeing these things really leads to them having their own direct experience. And so if we can inspire them, let's do it.
Let's do it. The more the merrier. Thank you so much for beaming in. Before everyone goes, make sure you check out all Zappy's social media accounts. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, please don't forget to drop us 5 stars, write us a word or two. Even 1 or 2 words goes a long way. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you've enjoyed this podcast, and like and comment, please, because the algorithms, the only way they favor us with the content we put out is if people pay attention and they like and they comment and they share the videos. So thank you so much. Zappy, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, brother. I will definitely be in touch because it's so great to finally talk to you. It's been
it's been a long time coming, so
absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
All right, brother. You take care. Good luck with everything you're doing.
You too.